Hi, soul friends. It's Anasa Saintpur, and welcome back to another episode of the Minutes on Growth podcast. Today, I am honored to have an amazing, wonderful guest with us, someone who I have been studying and following for over a decade and who has had tremendous impact on my life and my relationship. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Monica Berg, co-director of the Kabbalah Center. She's also the author of Rethink Love, which we covered in our book club. Fear is not an option, and the children's books, The Gift of Being Different and The Tale of the Other Glove. And she's also the co-host of one of my favorite podcasts, the Spiritually Hungry podcast. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have so many questions to ask, but I want to be mindful of our time and I want to get to talk about the tools and insights, the Kabbalistic tools and insights that have really had the most profound impact on my own life since studying Kabbalah since 2014. So it's been 11 years, and I think these four have been life-changing for me. But before we dive into them, I would like to know how you would define Kabbalah.
Uh, well, the most powerful, ancient, longest wisdom available for all mankind to help each person understand the laws of the universe, the rules of life, and to really effectively create a life that works for them, where they are discovering and meeting their full potential. But the caveat is that Kabbalah is a verb and it's an action and it is not for the weary. It requires a lot of consistent effort, as anything does, but really also embracing change. It's all about change.
And you refer to yourself as a change junkie, right?
Yes. I mean, and I didn't come in the world like that. Nobody really likes change. And in fact, we crave change, but usually we seek out for the changes that make us feel like we're still in control. And so we might say, oh, I'm craving sun. I'm going to go on a holiday, or I'm tired of my hair. I'm going to do a new cut, or I want a new car, whatever it is, right? But the change that we're talking about is the kind that's really uncomfortable. It's about going against your nature and really taking a deep dive into the things that you know are not working for you, the parts of your aspect of your personality or a character that don't serve you, and really pursuing the opposite of that to create a newness in you. And that is hard. And that's why most people don't like change. We want the change we can control. We don't want the change that's unexpected, the unknowable, the things that come out of left field that we didn't intend. That kind of change nobody really likes. But if you embrace change, you start to actually enjoy it. It creates a freedom because now you're kind of untouchable. Nothing really affects you too much because you're open, right? You're open to anything that can happen. And that's really powerful. So when I got onto that, I realized my need to control was making me really quite unhappy. And jumping into the opposite, the unknown, and letting go and relinquishing control made me feel happier than ever. And so I started to really practice that. And then that's how I became a change junkie.
I love that. And as you were sharing that, I was thinking of my own journey. And one tool that really helps me get to that state of like life is happening for me, like everything is as it should be. And I'm just kind of surrendering and going with the flow was this concept of certainty. I actually got it tattooed on my arm because I had to have that
Let me see.
reminder. I was like, I need to know. It's all coming from the light. So, can you tell us a little bit about what the concept of certainty is? Because sometimes people think it means being in control.
Correct. Most people don't understand certainty in the way that Kabbalists do. So let's start out with what certainty is not before we define what it is. So it's not that you believe that you are going to get everything that you want. So it's not a belief. It's not that we wait till we don't have any more fear to then take an action. It is not a guarantee that life will fold exactly as you want it to, right? So people feel like, oh, I'm certain, I know this is going to happen, but it's really coming from a place that's like, oh God, please, I hope this happens. Or if I really think positively enough about it, I'll create that. And that's not what it is. Certainty is that even when we're afraid, we still take action and we go forward. Certainty is even when the outcome is unknown, which by the way is always,
Hmm.
we move forward and no matter what happens, we know that it's for our greatest good. So the certainty is more about knowing that whatever comes up in the process, the messiness of it all, the difficulties, it's certainty that it's for your greatest good, it's for the making of you, and you need that process. And ultimately, wherever you end up is where you need to be. So that's a whole different thing, right? That's completely surrendering to the unknown and saying, okay, I trust that the creator, that the universe, however you want to call it, is bringing me this opportunity, even if it's difficult and I can't understand it in this moment, for an opportunity of growth and change, because that's really why we're here in this world, which is a really different understanding. And it's a really profound way of living and being, because then again, what we said a few minutes ago, you're not really affected by anything because you're not now invested in the outcome. You understand the journey is all about the process. And there's certainty in that opportunity, and that whatever the story looks like, that it's for your greatest good.
Hmm. A tool that helped me, for me, cultivate certainty was pause, what a pleasure. Of like, whenever something happens, I pause and I say, what a pleasure. I practiced it. I've experimented with it a lot. There even was this time someone hung up on me and I was writing a really mean email. And then I was like, let me pause. And I went out into the balcony. I was like, what a pleasure. He hung up the phone on me. And I came back in and, he called and he's like, I'm sorry. Thank you for giving me the space to kind of figure it out, and take accountability. And I've really seen it help me a lot. What's your take on that tool and how it kind of ties into us cultivating a stronger sense of certainty?
Exactly. They're all related and that's the beauty of Kabbalah. What it allows a person to do is to get out of the super focus that we have about all things. And it takes you into a higher perspective. And you're able now to view your whole life, and you can see it kind of like a game. We're all chess pawns, right? In this game, you can't take any of it too seriously. So, for instance, what gets all of us, even if we wake up in the morning and let's say we're, hoping to be spiritual beings, and we wake up and we're saying, okay, this day it's going to be good. I want to share, I want to help people, I want to be happy, I want to find joy, I want to find meaning. That's my day. I woke up this morning, that was my intention. You get in the car and you're on your day and you're smiling and you're going to wherever you're going and you're happy, and then what happens? You get cut off by another driver, or there's road rage, and they give you the finger, and now suddenly what happened to this day that you had intended to be so great and full of light? And then you react, and then you feel badly about reacting, and then sometimes people write the day off, or they feel like, oh my God, why do these things always happen to me? Why do I find myself in situations that are difficult or painful or challenging? So this concept of pause what a pleasure is, okay, this thing happened, which I didn't like, I didn't enjoy, I don't want. I'm going to pause. So you already shut down the reactive system. And just by taking a breath and saying, I don't know why this is happening, again, that goes back to the certainty piece, but I trust that there's an opportunity for my growth here. So I'm going to just pause. Then, if you recognize there's an opportunity for you, then you say, wow, what a pleasure, because this happened not by chance. It's giving me an opportunity either to fix something. Maybe I did that to somebody else and I hurt them. And instead of having karma come back in a different way, here's my opportunity to now rise above it. Or also, I just want to become more elevated and be a happier person. And by practicing this tool, and restricting, then ultimately I'm going to have happier days because I'm not going to be in the cycle of the highs and the lows and at the whims of the universe. Because most people live very reactively to every single thing. That person looked at me wrong, or they didn't like what. It's all ego, right?
Mhm.
It's the ego has us by the neck, and this tool is really practical because if you say it in that moment, now you've already brought back your consciousness, and now your soul is kind of leading rather than the ego. But I
Mhm.
do see a lot of people confuse being like restricting versus repressing. So
Mhm.
sometimes students will come to me and they're like, this Kabbalah thing, I've been restricting for so long and it's just not working. I'm so angry inside. I just feel so angry and I don't feel heard. I'm like, well, you're confusing restriction with repression. That's repression. Restriction is that you actually don't take your emotions too seriously. You're able to, in the moment, again, with that pause, saying, there are other things happening here that I'm not fully aware of.
Yeah.
Let me stop and see what else could be going on here. So then, and that's why Kabbalists say if you're upset, which you can't, in that moment, if it's just a stranger, not such a big deal. But let's say our closer relationships, like our spouse or our siblings or our parents, to wait 3 days before you say anything. Because by 3 days, what happens is you're no longer feeling angry or a negative emotion, and you're able to have that clarity of like, okay, I know that that thing that I said was wrong, or I wanted to say, I wanted to tell them off, or I wanted to write a scathing email. I knew that I don't feel that anymore, but the one thing that I don't feel good about is this. So you have the clarity now. All the anger, all the ego is gone. And if there's one thing, and usually there's nothing, but if there is one thing, you'll have clarity about what that is and you'll say it. So the reactive state that we find ourselves in is what really creates separation and builds walls between people. And this is a really great tool to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Such a powerful tool. I really highly recommend it. I've even convinced my mom to get a tattoo of pause because
Ah, you're
sometimes
big
you
on
need that
tattoo.
reminder. But speaking of relationships, one of the reasons I loved your book, Rethink Love, was it was so practical. It was like, okay, here's the story, here's what we learned from it, here's what we can do. And one thing that my Kabbalistic teacher taught me many years ago was like two prayers. One in the morning, I always wake up and I say, like, dear light, dear universe, please help me earn the light of the relationship. And also at night, I allow myself to say, okay, I surrender this relationship. If it's for my highest good and for my highest good of my partner, let us continue to put in the effort to flourish. So, can you tell us, like, when it comes to relationships and romantic relationships, what it means to earn the light of the relationship?
Well, I think what happens in the truest, actually, the most truest, beautiful things and meaningful things in life, we tend to not put a lot of weight and value there. Like we go after them, we pursue them, but then once we get them, we're like, okay, check, I got this, right? For the most important things. And then we tend to focus on the things that we shouldn't. The Kabbalists say we live in an upside down world, meaning you focus on all the wrong things, what people said about you, did they like you, did they not like you, how many followers you have, whatever it is, versus these other things that are really true, that are lasting, that are eternal, like love,
Mhm.
like your most beautiful relationships, empathy, kindness, compassion, those ways we show up for people. So that's the light in the relationship. It's hard to access those things because we lose this one thing first and foremost for all the things that matter most. Can you guess what that one thing would be?
Mm, no.
So it's appreciation. So I always say people who love each other even decide they can't be married anymore or they can't be together. It's not that they don't love each other, it's that they've lost appreciation for one another. So that appreciation brings you back to spirit, to soul, to essence, and then you connect from there. And in doing that, right, in acting like the light, you bring the light in the relationship. I think far too often, again, we work so hard to create businesses, to build families, to find our soulmate. And then once we get those things, we're like, okay, I did that. Now let me go do the next thing. And these things that are really true and eternal require constant energy and love and attention and certainly appreciation.
I love that. So, not taking your partner for granted and being vocal about how much you appreciate them, the relationship, their energy.
It's not even being vocal about it because I think that that again can be a checklist thing. I think
Mhm.
what I call it is active appreciation. So it's more about um, closing your eyes and really feeling how much you love them, or if you, for instance, even to appreciate your health, right? When you're eating something, to really appreciate that you can taste it. It's about really taking it to the next level where you actively feel it and then you can express it. But if not, I think that it's often just like, I love you, or just words. And certainly it's action that's most important, like showing your appreciation, which could be texting throughout the day just to share with them how you are, or asking how their day is, or surprising them with something that you know is meaningful to them, or really taking time to share something that you're thinking in the middle of a busy day, right?
Mm. And sometimes pausing in conflict. I feel like that could also be a form of
A thousand
appreciation.
percent. And also with that, right? If that's it, I always say, I mean, this is now more relationship geared, but I think that healthy relationships, you do need to fight. You need to choose a fighting style, but also it can bring you closer together than you were before the argument. If when you first you have the fighting style, but also you're not trying to win the argument, you're trying to understand the person's perspective, right? And the pause, what a pleasure part is often we take the word seriously, but I always say look for the want behind the words. Sometimes we're messy with our words. Sometimes we're reactive, right? But if you're looking for what they're really wanting, what is it they're trying to express? What's the hurt behind the words? Then you're going to have a whole different kind of conversation, right?
That's so powerful. Speaking of relationships, a question many asked when I said I was going to be interviewing you is how do we maintain certainty that our soulmate is out there for us? Like there's this big fear of like we're going to end up alone, or there's not enough spiritual people out there, or what if I meet someone who's not spiritual? Can we make it work? Like how do I have certainty that I will experience that love?
It's a great question. First of all, I think often people like the word soulmate, but they don't really consider what it is. If everybody has a soulmate because it's the other half of your soul. But it's very hard to attract that person. Why? Because you need to act that level of soul to attract that part of you, right? So let's say that you and your soulmate have a job to do together and you're meeting here. Or let's say you're supposed to, save children in Africa. And though somewhere on the journey, one of you got distracted, right? So now you're focused on other things. And so you're not really quite there, but this person's ready to save children, right? So they'll meet other people maybe, but they might not be the soulmate. They might be an aspect of a soulmate because you sometimes have different connections that certainly is love, but it might not be the ultimate soulmate. You have to work really, really hard to get there together. So I just want to say that. So of course there are soulmates, and then there are levels of soulmates. But any relationship can be a soulmate relationship if you act like that, right? Again, these things that we teach in Kabbalah, like appreciation, what true love is, unconditional love. So, my recommendation always for people, and I know that this works, I've seen it work, it's tried and tested and true, is that to meet the person, stop looking for the person. You need to become that person, right? So that's why in my book, it says becoming the one. And they're like, oh, they always read it the wrong way. Like, what do you mean becoming one? I said, no, becoming the one. You have to first be that to yourself, right? So a person that is kind to themselves, compassionate with their voice, follows their soul's pursuit. Like there has to be a spiritual kind of emphasis in that. And when you start to be those things that's on your checklist of who you want to attract, you're going to find that person much quicker. That's how it's elevated. That's how it happens. It speeds up the process much quicker. But I think most people kind of look out there with their list and like, why am I not finding that person? You need to be that person, and then you will attract that level of soul. And by the way, if not, what happens is you meet probably a lot of people, but they're not the one. Why? Because where are you, and from what place are you looking for that person? Is it the 99% reality or the 1% reality, which is another Kabbalistic idea where I mean, I feel like I'm talking a lot. I keep going. I'm like,
No, I love it.
um, so the 1% reality is everything that you see with your five senses, right? It's what we can touch, smell, and we tend to really live most of our life in that realm, and we tend to attract people from that space. But if you start to look at the 99%, it's again things that are lasting, eternal, like this person, do they have the same beliefs as you? Do they have the same motivations, goals? Are they kind like you are? Like the things that will last and grow. And of course you need attraction. And of course there are the 1% things that are important. But if you lead with this, then you're going to attract a very different kind of person, and one that you ultimately want to.
So here's my question. With that soulmate type of relationship where you become the one and you attract the one, will there still be, like cocoon conflict? will they still trigger you?
Look, every relationship, the person's a mirror and it's beautiful. So in soulmate relationships, again, this is another misconception. People think that they need it's going to be like, bliss all the time and happily ever after. The relationship really starts usually after the marriage, after the wedding. That's when the love story might be before, but the best love stories are actually created after. But what you want is you want somebody who opposes you. Soulmate relationships actually require opposition, and that's not how most people define it. You want somebody, again, if they are your soulmate, they're going to say, hey, you have the potential to do X, Y, and Z. And I believe that in you, and they help bring it out. Of course, it has to be something you desire for yourself. In my book, I talk about the golem effect and the Michelangelo phenomenon. So, the golem effect is that somebody wants their partner to be created in their vision of them, which might not be aligned with their own vision, and that's never going to work. But the Michelangelo effect is that you find somebody, phenomenon, sorry, you find somebody and you see what they could be, and you help chip that away. You help develop, create it into the masterpiece that it can be. But they also want it, right? It's who they are, it's inside of them. And that's really what a soulmate relationship is. So, of course, there's going to be opposition, there will be conflict, but it's going to be elevating and for your greatest good. So when my husband and I got married, we were different people. He was an introvert, but he was actually really quite funny and charismatic, but I was the only one that got to experience it. And I was really deep and curious, but I wasn't and I had a lot to share, but I wasn't confident in that. And he helped me see that I could be and really encouraged that. So and he's like, now he's, we have the podcast. He's out there but that's an example of what a soulmate relationship really looks like.
Mm. There's one thing you said, I don't remember if it was in your book and in one of your podcasts, but it was such a game changer for me. You said, it takes like 10 years to become a master at something. And so, like, giving yourself the grace to, in your marriage, like, it's not expecting it to be perfect overnight. And that was such a helpful piece of advice for me of like my partner and I always checking in, like, how can we be better, do better, and not expecting us to kind of have it all figured out overnight.
Yeah, I read the book Outliers years ago, and they did great studies on what is innate talent versus practice. And they followed like the Beatles and baseball players and what made a musician be like that level of greatness versus a music teacher, right? And you would think that it's innate raw talent, but they found that it was actually the practice of it. And of course, desire, right? Because the more you desire something, the more you're going to practice it, the more you're going to pursue it. So then I got thinking about relationships. Like, I think it's so funny when I meet with couples and they've been married like a year, like, I don't understand what I did. I'm a good wife or I'm a good husband. I'm like, no, you couldn't possibly be good because you've only have a year of experience. So they found that 10 years is 10,000 hours. And to master anything, it requires 10,000 hours. So that just put in perspective. And then it's kind of laughable. Like, you can't really take yourself too seriously when you fail, because of course you should fail, but it's about the desire and the practice.
I love that. I just have one last question, and that's because this is a question that really helped my family. I mean, relationships, but let's go into the family section. And it's the concept of bread of shame. I remember when my mom learned it, her relationship with my brother significantly changed. She was much younger at the time. And since then, it's always been at the back of my mind. So if you can just give us insight briefly into what it is and how it can help us.
Okay, so let me start with a story first. So, for those listeners that have children, or I'm sure you've seen this, maybe it could be any scenario because it's with adults as well. But if your child, let's say, got a summer job, it's their first job, and or even they have allowance for chores or whatever else, and they've saved up money and they go in the store and they buy something that from the money that they've earned, they probably appreciate it more. They're going to take care of it more. They're going to be careful with it because they earned it. They worked hard for it and they went out and they got something. Versus if a parent keeps giving and giving and giving to the child, it creates a dynamic that isn't balanced or healthy, not for the receiver and not for the giver. We see that as adults. Also, we see that in relationships also. People give and give and give because they're afraid the person will leave or they won't, it's conditional. So it's very complicated. Bread of shame is a Kabbalistic concept that explains exactly this, that dynamic of what happens when a person keeps giving to somebody who hasn't earned it. They start to feel bad about it, about the person giving it to them and about that thing, and also eventually about themselves. And the concept comes from bread way back when used to be a source of, like, an example of sustenance, right? Somebody who had bread to eat had something, right? A significant. And those that didn't felt shame about it. So here we are with this opportunity, and it's really bigger than that. And it's a deeper Kabbalistic understanding, which is the light in the vessel. So the light is all around us. It's those things that we talked about, the 99% reality. It's what's in us, it's soul. And every person is made up of light. So there was an abundance of light, and our it was so much that we felt bad about receiving it without earning it. And that's why our souls are in bodies, we are vessels, and we need our work in this lifetime is to really expand our vessels so we can receive more and more light. So that's why we have opportunities to do that every day, usually through restriction. And it's set up perfectly because when we start to do that, then we earn the blessings, we earn the gifts, we earn all of the beauty of this life that we are meant to receive. But there needs to be that experience of us creating and again, expanding our vessel through sharing, through being kind, through changing our ego-based nature to allow ourselves to receive that.
Thank you so, so, so much. I highly recommend everyone to dive deeper into this concept, especially if you're a parent, because I know it did miracles for our family. I was blessed enough to live in cities, London, Toronto, and now I know Dubai also has one where there's a Kabbalah Center. So I've done Kabbalah one 10 times with all the teachers because everyone teaches it differently and you pick up different things. But for those who don't have a Kabbalah Center in their home city and are not as, they don't have that blessing, how can they access the teachings?
Yeah, we have many centers all over the world, including those and more. We have master classes now so you can go to Kabbalah.com. First of all, we have many, many classes there, but the master classes are really exactly this kind of thing, teaching these concepts in a very exciting kind of different way. So I would check that out. I have two on relationships on there. My husband's on there, many of our teachers from all over the world, and we're adding content all the time. So I would say that would be the go-to, but also Kabbalah.com. And of course, listen to Spiritually Hungry.
Thank you so much, Monica, for coming on here, giving us your time, your wisdom, your insights. It's been an absolute honor having you.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Speak soon.